My name is Vivien, Ibironke, Ibiyemi. A lot of people call me Vivien because it seems to be a bit complicated with the names. And today I work with a company called Axis Communications in Sweden. And most of my experience in testing has been in medical technology and in the mobile industry. A little bit about me, I'm married and I have 3 kids. They are 17, 16, and 13. Just to familiarize you with some of the terminologies that I use during the presentation, when I mention the word code or build, then it means a piece of software. And PUT is a product under test. Now let's try to define the tester's mindset. I'll define the tester's mindset as a way of reasoning that determines behavior, outlook, and mental attitude of a tester or a programmer or even a project manager towards the testing of a program under test or a product under test. If testing is questioning a product, if testing is investigating a product to gain useful information concerning the quality of the product, according to James Bach, then I would like to say that the tester's mindset is the reasoning that is needed in questioning and investigating the product under test. Now, I would like to say that it requires the tester to continuously ask the question, how do I want to effectively test? How do I want to effectively test this program under test? How do I want to reason towards this program or this product to effectively test it? And I think I would also like to say that it requires the project managers, the test lead, and also the programmers to continuously answer the question, how do we want to support testing in order to enhance the development of a quality software or product? In trying to understand the tester's mindset in a bit more detail, I would like to say that it's good to understand the psychology of each role on the project. Now, the programmers say, I want to build the software or the product. The testers say, we like to test the software or we like to break it, like a lot of us use. The project manager says, yeah, I would like to deliver a working quality software. And the marketing guys say, we like to sell the product and, make a lot of profit for the stakeholders. In as much as these roles differ in their responsibility, you need a mindset as a tester, as a project manager, as a programmer, as a test lead. You need a mindset that works with the understanding of each role. Because if we're ever going to make quality products, then we need to work together. Therefore, this is just an estimation of what I think it should be. I think, each person working on the project should have a level of tester's mindset or test mindset. But majorly, the testers need, a lot of, a larger percentage. While I think that the project manager, the programmers should be able to, have a kind of mindset for testing. If we miss out this mindset, then we have a lot of problems on our projects. Before I continue, I would like to say that I have a bit of text in the presentation because just in case you have difficulty with my accent, you can read the text on the screen. So that's why I left the text in the slides. So I started out as a tester who knew little or nothing about testing. And I tell you those days, when I find a bug and another tester, tests the software, they find other bugs that I missed. And this made me, to keep wondering, what's the difference between myself and these guys? Why do they find bugs that I don't find? Initially, I thought maybe, well, they have more experience than I do, and over time, I will achieve this level of, expertise. But not too long after that, I discovered that even guys that were not experienced in my team, find bugs on a piece of software that I already tested. Then I got a bit worried that, okay, it's not about experience. Then I thought, okay, is it about certifications? Do they have some certifications that I don't have? I went into their profile, and, well, I tried to do certifications. It didn't help me so much. Then I thought, oh, maybe it's about books. And I started to read books, and today I still read books. But it wasn't that speedy, it wasn't that speedy to get me to the point where I felt or I thought I should be. So one thing that occurred to me was to start to observe, what was happening around me. Is there anything I can learn from, for example, scenarios when I find bugs? How do I find them? What was I thinking about, when I found that bug? Or when other people in the team find bugs, what were they thinking about? I also thought about, looking at interactions in the team. And when I looked at these, a lot of things were happening all around me. One thing that I observed was, at some point when I test, I was like this guy. With one single hammer, I want to solve many problems. But I tell you, it's difficult to solve many problems with one hammer. So I came to a conclusion that different tasks in testing requires different lenses, viewed at different angles, and with different mindsets. Hence, there's a need to tweak or vary my mindset for different test activities or tasks. So what I started to do was to observe, try to reflect on scenarios of bug finding, how I found them, what I thought about, when others find, and also things that were happening in the team. As I observed, I try to reflect on my observations, and I tell you, this is one thing. A lot of us observe, but we never reflect. And when we do reflect, we don't do anything with the result of our reflections. So I reflect, and then when I reflect, I try to act or adapt my reasoning to the result of my reflections. As I continue to do this, I discovered that I had different kind of mindset in different situations. And those scenarios where I found bugs that were quite interesting, I saw that I had the possibility to vary my mindset at such times. So I started to put a label on different mindset that I found useful. As I started to put a label, the different kind of mindsets started to evolve and evolve. And today, it has evolved, or they have evolved into a set of tools that I call my mindset toolkit. I use this to test. They have helped me a lot to grow from a tester that only finds obvious bugs to a tester that is more valuable in the teams and projects that I work in. So today I'm going to be sharing with us a few of these tools, how I discovered them, and the end goal is to also sensitize your reasoning to be able to develop your own tools when you go back to your workplaces. A lot of times on the projects that I worked on, when I find a bug, the programmer or the project manager says, the users will not use the product that way. I don't know if we have been in that situation before. And as a young tester, I will just let it go. But on one occasion, we released the product, and the first set of bugs or defects that were reported from the field was that one that they said that the users will not use the product that way. And guess what? The users actually use the product the way we said they will not use the product. After this occurrence, I thought about, one, I think I need to find more bugs in this area, more bugs like this. Because I think one thing that I failed in is being able to convince the project manager that that bug actually was reasonable or important to fix. So I need to find more bugs, and I need to be able to push through, convincing the project manager or my test lead. So one thing that came to mind is, one, to find more bugs in this area, the users will always interact with the program under test or the product under test with their different 5 organs. So it's reasonable to think about, what do they do with the side functions? The touch functions, the smell functions, mouth functions, ear functions. And someone said, what would they do with the nose functions? But this is just, to try to widen the scope of reasoning when you try to come up with test ideas. So I came up with these mindset tweaks. And when I refer to mindset tweaks, they are just lessons learned from every story that happened, which I've made into statements that I can use to adapt my reasoning when I test. So for every story that became interesting, I come up with what I call mindset tweaks. So I try to adapt my mindset that users will experience the product using their 5 senses. Human beings are exploratory in nature, so they will definitely explore. Now, to help my reasoning about the product under test, I gather information on how the users will use the product. And I tell you, when I started to do this, I started to find out, that I could expand the scope of my test ideas and find more and more defects in the product. Already tested mindset 2. I was transferred, to a project that was in the, they were actually in limited launch. When I say limited launch, they tried to release a few a few copies or samples of the product and try to let the users use and then get back with feedback. And then we'll try to fix the issues that are reported and then do a bigger launch. And during this limited launch, I was told to go and assist or support the project for 2 weeks. But I already had, I got an information that the limited launch was not going well. So when I got on the project, one, it was a bit difficult, what do you test, on a project that is almost finishing? Then I got this test suit from the test lead, and she told me, Vivien, we already tested this suit. We didn't change anything, so we don't expect anything to fail. Do a very quick check, and then be done. But because I had a pre-information that the limited launch was not going well, I felt, well, I think I should approach this product or suit, with an open mind. So towards the end of a 10 hours test, I discovered something it was about 5 minutes to the end of the test, something very strange. It showed me that something was actually wrong. I tried to reproduce, and then it was reproducible. I tried to look in other test cases, and I saw that I could repeat it in some other test cases in the suit. So I approached the test lead, and I told her, you know what, I don't think I can put a pass on these test cases. She said, but they've been tested before, and they passed. I said, well, I have a feeling from what I see that something is seriously wrong. So she reluctantly told me that, okay, you file, defects on the issues that you have observed. And I filed defects, and, it created a lot of, trouble on the project. Maybe not trouble, but attracted a lot of attention because, of course, they were supposed to be done soon. So testers were asked to try to reproduce the issue. Initially, they couldn't reproduce it. It's a whole long story, which will take a long time to finish the story, but the summary of everything is, at the end of the day, we reproduced the issues on other machines. The programmers, looked at the issue, and they discovered that it was something very ugly. That was, the bug was a very ugly one. Then the project manager called me and he said, Vivien, you know what? I think they should bring you to this project very early next time. He said the issues that you found are quite, crucial, and we're going to start fixing them even though we are late. When I left him, I just pondered and I said, what if I just accepted that, okay, the suit was already tested and I did a very quick check? I would have missed this bug, and it was a very critical one. So after that, I came up with some lessons learned, regarding this situation. And I tried to, tweak my mindset each time I test to try to, and I get like an already tested software. Somebody says it's already tested. I consider the quality of testing that was previously done. I try to tweak my mindset, to consider pressured tester possibility. And the truth is that, people probably, a lot of times we're working under different kind of pressures. And you probably do something very fast because you're under the pressure of time. And based on that, the quality becomes, questionable. One mindset to have is to consider the fact that we see differently, we reason differently, and we have varying expertise. Consider the so-called insignificant changes. And actually, I came up with this tweak, on one incident that happened in the office. One of my colleagues was asked by a programmer to commit a software, that what he said was that, okay, I didn't change anything. I just removed, an unused code. So you just commit it. And my colleague committed, and then within the next few, 1 hour or something, within the next 1 hour, no one could use the main branch again. And by the time they started to investigate, they discovered that it was actually that commit that my colleague did without testing. So I added this tweak after that experience that, okay, consider insignificant changes. When we say it's insignificant, there could have been some consequences of that. I was sitting in the meeting one day, and my head of software said, the lazy tester found that bug. I became actually curious, like, why did he call someone lazy tester? But he continued and he said, it's good to have them on the project, but not too many of them. I was like, okay. So I took the defect ID and I said I will go and check out on who the lazy tester is. Lo and behold, I discovered that it was one of my colleagues who actually, finds very severe bugs. And how does he find these bugs? He's testing, and then he goes to the coffee machine. And when he gets to the coffee machine, he meets a colleague and they start to talk, and he probably forgets that he was testing. So when he comes back, like after 1 hour or 30 minutes, something has happened to the machine. The machine is in a state of error. And then he goes to report the issue, and he says, you know what, I was testing, and then I forgot myself at the coffee machine. And by the time I came back, I discovered this error. So because of those kind of, the way he relates the story, people started to call him, or the project manager started to call him the lazy tester. But I didn't let it go. I just felt, okay, what can I learn? What mindset can I learn from these incidents? I went researching about laziness, and I discovered that my very good friend Bill Gates said, I will always choose a lazy person to do a difficult job, because it will find an easy way to do it. And then I said, there seemed to be some kind of value in laziness, Hence, I label this mindset, the lazy tester mindset. And I tell you, there are bugs that we might never find, except with tests like the lazy tester. And now, don't get me wrong, I'm not encouraging us to be lazy. But simply switching to that mindset, we get things done. So I came up with these tweaks, which I use for adapting my reasoning. Explore what the lazy tester does. They explore the software in ways that hardworking testers don't. Explore the talents in your team, and for these I'm talking to test lead. Don't write off lazy testers. The communication mindset. I know maybe this is quite common, for a lot of us. But I've been on projects, I started on a project where, I had to work with this programmer. And each time I approached him, he was always like puffed up like a peacock. And then I was wondering if I ever met him somewhere, but I couldn't remember meeting him anywhere. So in my mind, I said, okay, I need to find a way to work with him, even if he doesn't like me. So I started to what I started to do is I'll walk to his desk, even if I don't have anything to do with him. And then I'll try to say, hello, how are you? Your family, and all of that. And initially, it was always like, okay, how are you? And then the next time, okay, but then it became brighter and brighter. And if I ever have to test for him and I find a bug in his software, I don't go with the excitement, oh, I found a bug in your software. I go to him and I say, I observed something in the software. Can you just help me to understand? And then he comes and he follows me, and then he looks at it and he says, okay, I think it's a bug. Then I said, okay, should I find a bug report? Of course, I will find a bug report. I just wanted to get him on my side. And he says, yes. And before I left the company, we became quite, friendly with one another. After that incident and a lot of other incidences on the project, I came up with some tweaks. But before I show the tweaks, I would like to show us, sometimes, in our teams, I don't know if you've ever been in this kind of teams, but it's just like tussles or struggle between the tester and the programmers. Maybe not this violent because it's workplace. And sometimes we have this kind of teams. And in this kind of teams, what we forget is if that boat sinks, everybody is going to sink. But a lot of times we forget and we do like this. We're throwing the software here and there. Okay. I think the laptop shut down. I think it was not connected to the power supply. So sometimes we are throwing the software, the tester says, okay, we found the bugs, and if they like, they should fix the issues, and if they like, they don't fix it. And then the programmers say, we fix the issues. If they like, they should test it. If they like, they don't test it. And when you work in a team like this, I've seen projects, cancelled over and over because of this kind of attitude. So I came up with these mindset tweaks, which I use to tweak my mindset, and I encourage us to use, to tweak our mindsets. I'll need to show them to you, but maybe I use my laptop while the technical team tries to fix the issues. Please don't go away. It's valuable things, and I think we managed to fix the issues. So I reason that I need to have a mindset that it's my responsibility to make sure that my role is understood. And by this, I say that as a tester, you need to say, I'm here to help. I'm here to make the programmer's day. Because actually, I noticed that in some workplaces, we have this inscription that says, I'm here to make the developer's day miserable. And when we have this kind of inscriptions, in our workplaces, what happens? There's a kind of war between programmers and testers. So we rather say that, see, I'm here to make the programmer's day. I'm here to make you shine. And I consider that we need to have a mindset that says it's my responsibility to ensure an atmosphere of common goal, because we have a common goal. Therefore, my goal also is to provide stakeholders with valuable information. So what happens? I do everything that is morally right to get that information and to have good relationship with programmers. And if you're a programmer here also, is to do everything morally right, to have good relationship with testers. And then I be a friend, but yet I don't compromise my integrity. And someone in a conference in Canada asked me that, how is it possible to be friends with a programmer as a tester, because you have to criticize their work? And I said that, the fact that you have to criticize the work of a programmer does not mean that you cannot be friends with a programmer. And actually in the places where I work, I think I try to make it clear that I could be as friendly, as possible. But when it comes to the quality of the software, I'm friendly, but I don't compromise my integrity. Yeah. We have the trust mindset tool. And basically, it's about, I've been in a team where we had a programmer that everybody trusted. And in fact, I see testers committing software to the main branch, without testing, because she's the one that developed it. And sometimes we find problems or recurring problems in some of those software. So I was asked to test for her on one occasion. And what I did, I said, well, she told me actually that, Vivien, just do a quick check. And it was actually a very critical feature, and we're doing the changes at a critical time. So she told me, do a quick check, and just commit. But in my mind, I thought about those incidences I've had of, people just committing, without properly testing. So I said I'll trash that, mindset, and I'll have a mindset that also approaches the software with an open mind. And I started to test. I found the first bug. I found the second one. Actually, on the second one, I had to walk to the project manager, and I told him, please, I think I'll need more time, to test this software. And he said, okay, go ahead. And then by the time I found the fifth one, the programmer said, you know what? I think I don't know how this software is supposed to work. And then we had to sit down and try to understand the software, and then she tried to fix the issue, and then we committed and we tried to release, even though we did it a bit late. But what I learned, the tricks that I came up with, after that incident was a skeptical approach to testing can significantly improve the quality of your work. It's a minor change, it won't break anything, it's a bait for the integrity of your work, so don't fall for it, both testers and programmers. People often say, don't trust the programmer, but I would say, trust the programmer, but don't trust the developed code. So let's shift, the issue of trust away from the programmers and put it on the code, because the nature of the work that we do actually is that we have bugs in the code. I was working with a programmer, and then he told me, Vivien, don't bother testing that feature because I tested it in unit test. But something told me that I should still check it, so I decided to check. And then lo and behold, what he told me that he tested failed. And then I said, okay, one, I had two problems. How do I go and tell him that I still tested what he said I shouldn't test? So I tried to develop a test, in which I tried to use this feature. And then I went to him and I said, I observed something, can you have a look at it? And then he came and he said, oh, but I tested it in unit test. Then I told him that, well, then he said, Vivien, I know you're not going to trust me anymore. And I told him, you know what, I trust you. I trust that you always do a good job, and you try to do a good job, but the nature of the software that we develop is that as long as we decide to develop, the bugs are actually trailing behind us. So I came up with these tweaks, never to commit a code based on it was just a small change, it will not break anything. Never commit a code based on how good the programmer is. No such thing as perfect programmer in the world of software testing or software development. I let the programmers know that I trust that they will do a good job, and I'm here to uphold that trust. Though we are tight on time, I appeal, please can you give me more time, just like I did in that story that I told us. I'm going to try to skip over these because of time, but I'm going to put up the slide on the conference page, and then you can find more about these tools. One of the ones that one other tool that I came up with is the curiosity mindset. I was always in a situation, or I find myself in situations where I probably get thrown in the midst of a software, or a software gets thrown at me, and maybe there is no requirements. And I started to think about, like, what kind of mindset should I have, when I have to test something and then we don't really have requirements. What came to my mind is to try to question the software in this way. I call it 7W plus 1H mindset tweaking technique. And basically, I try to ask the questions, why, when, where, which, who, what if. After a lot of these incidences, and I established that this actually works when I have to come up with test ideas, for, a program, even though I don't have, requirements. I came up with this mindset to question the software in this way, to have an open mind and do not take things for granted, to question why certain things are the way they are, even though they seem awkward. Especially when they seem awkward. Be a good listener. Quietness often helps. Think before acting or asking. I say this because a lot of times I find myself initially, or people in situations where when we find a bug, we're so excited, so we just go to the programmer, I found a bug, I found a bug. And the programmer is not so excited, as much excited as we are. And then we're wondering, why is he not excited? I had a young tester like that, or junior tester like that in my office, and she got discouraged that they were not excited the way she was. But a lot of times it's good to be a bit quiet, do the excitement in the toilet maybe, and then go and have a different approach when you approach the programmers. Pay attention to the little bit of, I have less than 1 minute, and so I'm going to move to the slides that talks about how to develop our own mindset tools. We have a lot of, all of these, and yeah. I have the bug reporting mindset. I have the test leading mindset. I'm sorry, we had a bit of problems here, so we lost time. I still have to try to keep to the time, despite that. We have the business mindset. Yeah. I'm afraid to, yeah. Okay. When I thought about, situations, or, could there be theory that talked about mindset, I found the work of Carol Dweck, and she talked about the fixed and the growth mindset. So I decided to categorize the tester's mindset as the fixed and the growth mindset. And I see that we have a lot of tendencies to be on this side if we refuse to grow our mindset. And if we decide to grow our mindset, we have the tendency to be like this. Please, you can have a look at them on the website or in the slides later on. And in conferences, people ask me, how do we learn, or how do we cram the mindset tools? And I told them, well, I went back thinking, and I said, I think I don't want people to cram the mindset tools. What I want, or what I think is best, is to be able to come up with your own tools depending on the environment where you find yourself and the product you are testing. So I came up with this model, which I call the HORA model. And basically, it was what I did to come up with these mindset tools. So the first thing is to observe occurrences on your daily task. Pay attention to how you and other testers find bugs. Learn to tell and note test stories. Reflect on the observed activities of the day, the bugs that were found, or that you found or other people found, how they were found, occurrences and interactions in the team between programmers, project managers, and testers. Adapt. Identify and label what reasoning and mindset were useful in the test stories and test experiences. Adapt your reasoning based on your identified tools when you test. So what are we going to do next? If you got something from this presentation, please decide to grow your mindset. And if you're ready and you're set, then we can grow our mindsets. Thank you very much.
So thank you for interesting presentation. So do we have the first question? Oh, I saw the first guy there. So please, if somebody wants to get the first prize, should always go in front because I notice faster.
Thank you so much. It was a very good stuff. Yeah. Lately, everybody has been adapting to the agile process where you always work against time. Probably have 2 weeks sprint, 1 week or something. How much of negative cases or scenarios should you really have? What kind of mindset should you have when you have to deliver maybe 2 weeks? Are we supposed to look more on the positive side or more on the negative side? Like if you tell your PO, okay, I think we have more of negative stuff, and it's like, oh, just face this acceptance criteria, and So how much of negative touch should we have when we don't have time? Thank you.
If I understand the question correctly, when you are choked up with time, a lot of times, like someone asked me also previously, I think it was yesterday, like, what's most important at such times? And I think your project manager wants you, or to find the most important bugs at that point in time. And someone said, how do we find most important bugs? And I said, for me, like, also I work in Scrum teams, it's always like 2 weeks, and then you don't have enough time, and then you have certain requirements that you need to test against, and sometimes you don't even have enough time in 2 weeks to make all those tests. But I always think about, like, if anything goes wrong, somehow, even if they don't blame me, but someone remembers that it was Vivien that worked with this. And usually I was working with medical products, a lot, and that has to do with people's life. So I try to take some of my, I think my own destiny in my hands sometimes and try to think, okay, what is still most important in the midst of all of this? And I make decisions based on that, and I try to go a little bit sometimes out of what is required, because for me, the requirements actually test certain areas of the software, but it doesn't test everything. But in some companies, when we are done with testing those requirements, we think we are done with testing, and then the quality of the software is still questionable. So to what extent should you do negative testing? I think you should begin to look at, the areas of risk. How risky is this area, or what other risk, or in how many ways can this product fail and fail gallantly in real life? I think it's important to do those kind of tests. I don't know if I answered the questions correctly. Did I?
Yeah, you actually did, but I was just wondering, there are some, if you see a feature, you could probably get 1 million negative scenarios with respect to one positive one.
Yeah.
You understand? And you throw it, and the PO says, oh yeah, just pass it, but you don't feel good. Okay, I think this is going to come back, and you have to fix it and all of that.
I think it's to prioritize, one, because if you have 1 million and you have 2 weeks, I think most important is to try to prioritize. When we look at the 1 million negative tests, maybe not all of them. There are some of them that have a higher risk than the other ones. So for me, I think I would take the ones with the highest risk. And definitely, no matter how long we have, we can't always test everything, right? So it's which of them has higher risk, and then I try to take those ones, based on the time that we have. And you might not feel good about the fact that you couldn't test everything. But if you have touched the different areas of risk or high risk, I think it's better than not being able to test at all. So other ways to do it is I try to talk to, because I know sometimes you could have a project manager that makes unreasonable time plans. I'm sorry if you're a project manager and you are here, but it's the reality. And I try to talk to my project manager, and sincerely, you see, I always say that, I don't know if I said that in the presentation, that as a tester, you should try to add value, be a valuable tester. Because when you're a valuable tester, then they will listen to you. When I go to talk to my project manager and like say, I think we need more time on this. When I enter his office, it's like, Vivien, if it's you, I think I just want to listen. And he listens to me, but I tell you, it wasn't like that in the beginning. In the beginning, I was a very frail, fragile tester. But when you have that value, when they see that you bring value all the time, someone listens to you because they know if they don't listen to you, then something goes wrong. Yeah.
Okay, here's the prize. And do we have more questions as far as they saw?
Questions? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think you mentioned about like you tested in a one way, and the user you didn't thought that the user will use it in a different way,
Yeah.
but they did.
Yeah.
So basically, that happens quite often, I guess, for
Yeah.
testers.
Yeah.
Do you think it's like good to spend the time and test if there is some stupid test cases which you think won't be used by the user, or it's better to just keep it and save time?
Thank you very much. Very interesting. I think it's better to try to test because a lot of times, one thing is like, I left the company where I was working before and I joined a new company in June. And my project manager said something to me when I was leaving. He said, Vivien, you are not just an ordinary tester. You're a tester that you help the developers or the programmers to widen the scope of their reasoning. And how do I do that? A lot of times they say the users will not use a product this way. But I discovered that, we started to sell our products in India, in Africa, in China. And we started to get problems that were related to how they use the product in those areas. In fact, in India, we had problems with altitude. And because the programmers didn't think about that, or the project didn't think about that, it was not tested. So what I think is like, you try to bring this up, but I try to tell them, like when they said the users will not use it this way, I said, I think someone will use this like this in Nigeria, in Ghana, in China, in India. And when I say that, they start to think, and like, okay, yeah, that was how you said it the other time, and then we had this problem. So it's trying to, because it doesn't make sense to them, and the thing is that the programmers are sometimes they're just thinking this way. And you as a tester on the team, I think it's still your responsibility to try to bring in, like you try to think very wide. Okay, how could they use this? If this product gets to this place, how is it going to work? How could they use it, in different parts of the world where we sell the product? And if you are able to explain that to them, after one or two occurrences, I think, yeah, maybe they agree to test it, but I think it's good to test, yeah, those areas. Find a way to test it.
Yeah, probably the last question.
Do you agree that testing skills with mindset tools come from experience-based techniques? Or if not, if you don't agree, what other techniques can be?
Okay, thank you. I've thought about this before because when I was going to do a workshop on this topic, I thought like, okay, somebody maybe needs to have a story to tell before the person can come up with a mindset tool. But then, I did a conference in Canada, and there was this guy, I think it's Frank Shelton, he wrote a blog on this presentation, and he came up with some mindset tools that I never imagined in my life. And then that made me think like, okay, it's probably not about experience. He didn't have a story, but he said, based on what happens in my workplace, well, maybe that is experience. He was able to come up with some mindset tools. But I think even if you don't have experience, I have this class